associated with the holy month of Ramadan. We always look at Islam and science. We look at scientific aspects that as Muslims we need to abreast ourselves with, so that we become better worshippers. Our guest always reminds us that why we bring these scientific aspects is not for us to theoretically talk about them, but contemplate and then try to know that Allah has power that is beyond ordinary understanding of individuals. So that enables us to appreciate His control over us, and that we put into practice whatever He commands us. So inshallah, in the past weeks we were looking at mathematical miracles in the Holy Quran. We also looked at the ocean life and the rest. Today we want to come up with another theme that is in line with contemplation, and that is scientific contemplation for us as Muslims. There are so many things that are scientific that Allah has mentioned about in the Holy Quran, that the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has talked about, and we want to identify one or two of them and then try to see how we better appreciate them. Of course, always to appreciate this, we are joined by our guest, Mr. Hamza Sekalema, who is a lecturer at the Islamic University in Uganda, the Department of Computer Science. It is my honor to welcome him, to say salam to you, and then we see how to proceed. You're most welcome.
Now, my dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the gift of life and enabling us to worship Him.
Amen.
We as Muslims know very well that a person can be rewarded for an action that they have not actually done.
Of course, yes.
So meaning there are two issues regarding the actions of ibadah. There is having the intention to do it, then there is doing it. Anyone that has a full intention to perform an act gets the reward of that act, even if they have not performed it.
MashaAllah.
But the one that performs it has additional benefits that come with it, and that is the important part. Meaning,
yes,
you can actually live your life earning rewards out of actions without necessarily doing
without
them.
doing them.
Of course, you must have serious commitment. You don't pretend. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly what is in your heart.
Yes, yes.
But once you have the chance to also do the action, there are other additional benefits that you get out of that action, which we need to be conscious about.
MashaAllah.
So today we are looking at tadabbur, essentially contemplation.
Contemplation, yes.
We Muslims are commanded by Allah to do what is called tadabbur. Now tadabbur means you meditate, you contemplate deeper into the inner meanings of the facts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls your attention to, and that's what we are going to be doing. Tadabbur can be over a number of topics, so many things you can do, but for us we are focusing on the scientific areas, because that's our main theme for this particular show, inshallah.
Thank you very much. So dear viewer, that is our guest, of course is a common face. We just wanted to be sure he's the one we are having, because you know when you're viewing, you always want to ensure there is a match between what is being presented and what you expected. But I think now the viewers are, alhamdulillah, appreciating that the person we've introduced is the one that is before us. So cosmology, astronomy. You know, one time I went to some school, then there was cosmetology and cosmology. Now today we are having cosmology and astronomy. I think you're going to help us first break them down before we go into the Quran verses.
Now both of the words are simply meaning the things that are beyond the earth. So you are talking of planets, stars, etc. Those things that are beyond our planets, they are what we are lumping together as
cosmology.
As the cosmology and astronomy. We don't want to be very technical in the program, because the program is for general audience viewership, so we don't want to be over scientific. It does not serve the purpose.
Then there are these courses people started to do with is it hairstyle?
Yeah, that one's called
so it is cosmetology,
and the whole thing comes from the word cosmetic. Now cosmetic is something that is not real, something that you you create by yourself. So the entire industry of cosmetology is about changing human appearance in a way that is not necessarily the original appearance. That's why you have makeup and all these things.
Can you imagine it's a full course in one of these?
Yeah, by the way, it requires science and a lot of order. It's not mere painting things on the faces, because the professional, for example, makeup artists do it in such a way that you cannot actually easily recognize that makeup has been done on a person. Because you see, makeup is some kind of cheating exam, meaning you appear this,
yes,
but you are changed to appear differently. So it should not be obvious, because once it is like walking into an exam room with a piece of paper in your hand, everyone will know that this is cheating. But if you can go in there and no one sees that you are cheating, then you'll have. So it is an industry that requires training.
So dear viewer, I think now we get the difference. There is cosmetology and then cosmology. So we are not talking about the cosmetics business. It is life out of the earth that we are on. So we are looking at cosmology and astronomy.
So our verse of focus initially will be this verse in Surah 21. What is Surah 21?
Surah 21 is Anbiya, verse
Surah
what?
Anbiya, verse 30.
Verse 30, yes.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks a question.
Yeah.
And he says, Ba'da billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Awalam yara alladhina kafaru anna samawati wal arda kanata ratqan fafataqnahuma waja'alna minal ma'i kulla shay'in hayy afala yu'minun.
Yes.
Now, this verse is saying, do the disbelievers not realize that the heavens and earth were once one mass, and we split them apart, and we created from water every living thing? Will they not believe?
Yes.
Now, this verse requires a lot of contemplation. Number one, this verse is where Allah challenges the unbelievers. They have an interesting dimension. Remember that the unbeliever is not expected to be reading these verses.
Of course. They need some tip, perhaps, to
the unbeliever is not expected to be reading this verse. So you'll wonder, why is the verse even there? Because the Quran is essentially not the domain of people that don't believe in it. They may not take a lot of time to read. So why is Allah putting these verses that challenge unbelievers and putting them in a book for believers?
For believers. That is something to think about.
So the whole idea is, once you see a verse like that one, that verse is not for the unbelievers.
It is for the believers.
It is for the believers. But he is warning you that if you don't contemplate to the level of understanding the essence of this verse, you are nearly the same as
the unbeliever. Yes.
So the scientific fact here that we see in the verse is this issue of the samawati wal ard originally being in one place.
The earth and heavens.
Now remember that for us scientists, we theoretically believe that the uniformity that is visible within the entire universe shows that it must have been together at a certain point.
Oh, it is a scientific
yes, the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory is based on the understanding that there is too much uniformity across the universe for us to think that these things were not actually at a single point at a certain element of time. So therefore, the scientists have already come up with the understanding and a belief, because by the time they declare something a theory, it has enough support within the scientific community. So the whole idea is, given the extreme uniformity we see in the universe, the way it operates, the way things are, we scientists believe that at a certain point it must have been together. But now, if the universe is now a very large thing like this, and you theoretically believe that it must have been together at a certain point, then it must have occupied a very small mass. Because you don't have a stopping point and say it was this size.
This size, yes.
But now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, people that say that we are believers, to think careful about the fact that at a certain point in time, these two entities, the things that are outside there, the main part of the universe and the earth, he's saying that they were one thing.
One thing, yes.
Then he says that he split it apart. And that entire splitting apart is also visible by scientific observation.
Yes.
It is seen that even up to now, the bodies that we see in space are still moving away from
the earth.
From the earth or from the center. They are moving backward.
Yes, yes, yes.
So if I find that something is moving backward, then I can think that at a certain point I can replay it backward. And they will finally end up at the same point.
Same point, yes.
So this therefore means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to appreciate that this entire expanse that you are seeing, it was not like that originally.
Oh, it was
because the belief, remember that the Muslim has a number of things that they have to believe in. Number one is we believe in the akhirah.
Life after death.
Meaning when people die, it does not end there. They will later go and be rewarded.
Yes,
for the believers, the reward will be
paradise, Jannah.
But if they give you some estimation of the sizes of what Jannah people will have, each individual, you are told that the minimum will be like the samawat, meaning this current universe that you are seeing here will be owned by a single individual. So how are you going to believe in that if you have not contemplated very carefully about the fact that these things were all together initially, and now they have reached the scale that we can see?
Yes, I get that now.
So you get the whole idea. So meaning, to contemplate carefully about a verse like this one, it is not colliding with what is generally accepted within the science, that this entire universe started at a single point. But because for them, they don't have this part where Allah is giving the order, they now call it a bang. They claim that there was a big bang. But that one is also not scientific, really. The big bang was caused by what?
They call it expansion of molecules.
And for us as scientists, we don't agree that something can just out of the blue.
There was change in pressure relative to the...
But it must have been started by something. So there is no way you can do Big Bang alone.
I remember in our geography, there's what they used to call instabilities within the Earth's interior. Then there is a change in pressure and temperature. Then there is melting of rocks, and then before you know
those
that,
things you find they need some kind of force that is going to order. And
they need an ignition.
And that is how we Muslim scientists now find our lives a lot easier. Because for us, we don't have any problem accepting that that Big Bang there was an order of Allah. So it becomes a lot more logical when you attach a higher being to the Big Bang. Otherwise, if you don't put an intelligent entity behind this Big Bang, you'll end up talking a lot of absurdities. Because now, yes, the Big Bang occurred, but if you pick, for example, an egg and you drop it onto the ground and it splits into very many small pieces, there is no logic in how those small pieces finally end up splitting. So you can't have an intelligent life form forming after that kind of very random event. You can't have chemicals. You can't have entire planets with even... So you can only make sense in this Big Bang and the start of the universe in case you look at it in terms of an intelligent force called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving an order, and the
that
order
is
is not just random, because there are other books that talk of creation.
Yes.
But for them, they give it a very humanly
Explanation.
look at it. For example, they say that initially there was no light. Then God said, let there be light.
Let there be light, yes.
And there was light.
And there was light, yes.
And he was happy with what he had created. That one is now undermining the capacity of Allah. Because you are saying he didn't know how it would. Because to be happy with what you've created, it means initially you didn't really know
you
how
are
it's
guessing
going to turn
whether
out. You didn't know how
whether
the
what I'm
things,
experimenting will come to be.
you don't know how the thing will turn out. But once you do it, hey, you see the thing is looking very good. But that is not how Allah created the universe. This entire Big Bang we are talking about is one command from Allah, and everything with its order, the way it is, was established.
MashaAllah.
So that is something very important that we have to know about this entire universe. And therefore, the earth has materials that are also available on the moon and other places. So meaning these things are all just coming from one same source. But you will wonder how much of material Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala generated in order to. Many of these things are beyond us as human beings, but Allah brings them to us, not to go into a lot of detail in how it occurred, but just to call our minds to understand that there is an entity that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he has to be worshipped.
MashaAllah.
So that's the whole idea.
Oh, so does our appreciation of this verse also help us understand the idea of the start of creation?
Yes, because we are essentially comparing the human understanding of how the entire universe could have come into existence, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is challenging those who disbelieve and telling them, don't you know that these things were all one and we separated them? In that case, Allah is talking of having separated them. So that now rhymes with our understanding as scientists. And it also gives us an understanding that however wide the universe may appear to you now, at a certain point in time it didn't exist, and at a certain point in time Allah ordered for it to begin its expansion, and to this day it continues to expand. So those are things that we need to keep in our minds to understand that however large you see the universe, it all started at one single point under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
MashaAllah. I think with the second aspect of water that is mentioned in the verse, we can look at it after the break. But perhaps I want you also to help us appreciate, in the other religious scriptures, they say when people die, they go to heaven. And it is in Islam where we have Jannah and Jahannam. So the heaven we are talking about, meaning it's supposed to be what we see as the offshoot of the earth heaven combination, or it is also another different world?
Yeah, usually when they are describing the samawat, or the parts above the earth, they refer to them as heavens within the Quran. But remember very well that the Quran is not an English book, it's essentially an Arabic book. So the English terms are selected by human beings according to their limitations in how you can translate an Arabic word into English. Otherwise, they don't mean heaven, the Jannah. They just mean what is above the earth. So what is above the earth is regarded essentially as
but Allah's Jannah will be a different creation altogether.
That one will be. It may already be in place, because we know very well that nearly everything was created at the same time. Remember very well that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the journey of Isra al-Miraj, and he was taken into Jannah, meaning it is already there. It's not like it has to be created once we have all died. No, it is already there.
So in other words, the Muslims, to grow our Islamic vocabulary, we should use the word Jannah and paradise more often than heaven.
Because the word heaven simply means what is above the earth.
Yet Jannah, paradise, is Allah's special creation for those who have done good.
And it is a very large expanse. Everyone will have extremely large amounts of possessions. And if you look at the universe, even the observable one that we see with our telescopes, you cannot have any doubt that Allah has the capacity to create an entire universe for each and every one of us, and we shall not even be able to
actually, I also now remember that when Allah says the journey of one person is out of the sama, meaning you'll have to combine the earth and the heavens.
Exactly, meaning you'll need an entire universe for each person.
Yeah, I understand.
And he has the capacity.
He has the capacity. Thank you very much. So, dear viewer, we are looking at Islam and science, and today we are looking at scientific contemplation for us as Muslims. We are picking on those aspects that Allah has mentioned in the Quran, or the Messenger Muhammad has mentioned to us, and then try to dig a little bit deeper to get a better understanding and appreciation of the same. So, for starters, we said cosmology shouldn't be confused with cosmetology, which is a science of making cosmetic products and the related services that come there too. And then secondly, we are looking at the fact that cosmology is to do with the magic, the power of Allah in terms of creation of the heavens and earth. So inshallah, we have had an interesting discussion, which we shall be continuing with after this short break.
Eno ye Salam TV.
Lillian! Lily flower!
Osmosi.
Sirabasi obulungi. Power bank y'omutima gwange. Kasukali mata gange.
Nsanyusa okulaba. Lero tugulireyo ku chicken.
No problem. Mulye buli kye mwagala. Nakoze dda order. Meka?
12. 12.
Kati olaba otya bwe ntolako kino ne ntolako ne kino ne neewola ne kano kati ziba mekaawo.
Sente bwe ziba tezikumala teweetawaanya, weesootinge ne MTN Momo. Kozesa Momo app oba nyiga *165*5 oyongereko ne Momo Advance osasule.
Let's live it up and party and have cracking good fun. When it comes to edutainment, DSTV's #1.
Is everybody ready to go, go, go?
We've got the zaniest characters to transport you away. The party is cracking, so why not come play? You're gonna love it. We've got so many channels and a ton of new shows, like Disney and Nickelodeon, where anything goes. So live it up with DSTV. We bring the fun. You know we're #1.
Okulinyisa omutindo gwa Afro Mobile. Eno yengeri joyinza okuzza obujja omutindo gwa Afro Mobile yo. Funa app ya Afro Mobile okuva ku mukutu gwa Google Store oba App Store oba ku mutimbagano gwa www.afromobile.com. Londako forgotten password. Tekamu account yo eya Afro Mobile ozebujja pin code yo. Ojja kufuna obubaka ku email yo okuli ne code empya. Bw'oteekamu code eyo olwo pin yo empya ekkirizibwe. Afro Mobile, emboozi za Africa ezannamaddala.
Upgrades are nice, but stepping up is woohoo!
I got a surprise for you.
Upgrade today to get even more with Step Up.
That's huge.
I know.
So if you're on GoTV Max and upgrade to GoTV Super, you'll get even more with GoTV Super Plus.
Really clever play.
Get big value. Get big entertainment.
It makes the difference.
Get stepped up to even more with GoTV.
Man.
Upgrade today using the My GoTV app or dial *206#.
How to protect yourself from misinformation on social media. Pause before sharing. Stop and think. Don't share posts immediately. Take a moment to assess the content. Ask yourself, does this seem too good or bad to be true? is it designed to provoke a strong reaction?
Eno ye Salam TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dear viewer of Salam TV, we continue appreciating you for keeping it Salam. We are in the Alhidaayah show, where we look at Islam and science, and today, alhamdulillah, we are looking at scientific contemplation for us as Muslims, as provided in the different verses that Allah gave us in the Holy Quran. Remember, if you miss the earlier part, you can always get it as a recap on the Salam YouTube page. Type Alhidaayah, and then the topic will be popping up, and you can view it and like and share with your colleagues, such that we continue benefiting. You feel free also to put the comments in the comment section of the YouTube. We can always pick them up and perhaps make commentaries in the next episode. So before we went in for the break, we had introduced verse 21, verse 30 of Surah 21, Surah Al-Anbiya, where Allah is talking about the earth and heavens having initially been one single mass, and then He separated them. So we have gone into the details of the discussion. Inshallah, you can read further by putting the same verse either in Google Scholar, Google Search, Meta AI, and all the other AI platforms. You can get more detailed information of the same. So there's a second part to the verse, which is to do with what is the origin of life, and it is what I'm going to invite our guest, inshallah, to start from there.
Now, so the second part is saying وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ.
Now, water is the source of,
and we made from water everything that is alive. Now, for us scientists, we already have the notion, and you can see that that notion is the main engine behind the entire business of space exploration.
Wow.
You realize that whenever they go out there, they are not just wandering randomly. They wander looking for water on these planets.
So,
because the scientific belief is that where there is life, there must be water, meaning you cannot have life in the absence of water. And this is the principle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already made for us in this verse, that we created every living thing that you can see from water. So the scientists already have that as their understanding, and that's why whenever we try to evaluate a planet whether it has capacity to harbor life, we don't look for individual creatures on the planet. No, we simply look for water, because water will be far more abundant than having to look for individual creatures. Imagine if you are scanning the earth from space, you will not be able to see all the human beings and the cows and etc. on the surface. It would be very difficult, but you can see the large water bodies, the oceans, the etc. So it is very easy for you to know that this particular place has some life in it.
Yes.
So what do we actually now get as a contemplation point regarding this issue of water? Number one is to appreciate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely merciful to us regarding the way He has made water abundantly available on earth. Because wallahi, given the importance of water, if Allah had made water as rare and difficult to get as, for example, oil, there would be a lot of problems for the inhabitants of the earth. But you can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has picked a very important element like water, and He has made it abundantly available. And for us who may not be thinking about water very carefully, that water is a very special material. we shall look at some of the things that make water a very special material. You don't just find it anywhere. Yet you see that on earth it is available in very large quantities because of just Allah's mercy. But here are some of the important things about water.
Yes.
Number one, water is able to dissolve a lot more things than any other liquid. Meaning, if you look at a liquid like paraffin, there are a few things that can go into paraffin and they dissolve. So it can't work as a very good solvent, something that will cause other things to dissolve. But with the water, you'll find a very large number of chemicals and physical things can actually dissolve in water and become part of it.
Maybe if I may ask, does the liquid part of paraffin qualify to be called water, or it is its own state?
No, it is a liquid of its own. It does not contain water and paraffin. No, it is. It resembles water visually because it is transparent, but it has a very poor ability to dissolve things. So you can't have it. Now, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this water to dissolve very many things? Because for life to happen, for the majority of creatures, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it in such a way that life is sustained by some chemical reactions within the body of that thing which is alive. Because you see, for a car to move, you have to pour there some fuel. And once you pour fuel, the fuel does not cause the car to move. A chemical reaction that causes this fuel to burn is later transferred into motion, and that's how the car moves. Meaning the entire thing is all about the chemical reaction, and that's why if you pour water into that tank there and it mixes with the fuel, there will be major catastrophe. The vehicle will not even move. So even for these bodies that Allah has given us, we as living things, for them to function, they require some chemical reactions inside there. And the only material that is able to dissolve all these various minerals and allow them to interact and allow the bodies to function and to maintain life the way it needs to be, you need something as universal solvent as water, something that will dissolve a very big number of chemicals and cause them to react and finally support the entire chain that gives us life. And for us as human beings, life is all about energy. It is all about building the body. There are so many things, but all of them finally end up being chemical.
So maybe before we leave that point, you know, the doctors recommend that we should have a minimum amount of water intake.
Exactly.
We are so lazy of late. I don't know. This we take a lot of factory-made juice, snacks, but water intake is a problem. What?
I think because we tend to look at it, at eating more as a form of entertainment
instead of the nutritional benefits.
So if you look carefully at the way we eat, the biggest effort is put on the entertainment part, because by the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very merciful for the human beings that we eat as a very essential part of life, but he made it also a form of entertainment. So we are able to sustain life and at the same time entertaining ourselves. It's a very high level of mercy, because you see, for example, when a snake is eating, do you really believe that that snake is having any enjoyment whatsoever? A small snake like this has to swallow a big rat. You can't cut it into pieces, you can't cook it, you swallow the entire thing. But you know how badly these rats smell, and it is so it means its eating is not a form of entertainment whatsoever. For it eats as a prerequisite to life, but it does not have any form of entertainment. Actually, it is nearly a punishment, the way it has to swallow a very large piece and sit there for some time for the piece to get digested. But for the human beings, there is an entertainment part to it.
It's what we focus on.
But in the end, we do a lot of work on the part of entertainment and we forget all about the nutritional element. So the same thing applies to water. Remember that water has no taste.
Of course.
So meaning you don't get a lot of entertainment by taking that tasteless water, but it is a very important part of your body, because like the whole business of being a solvent that we are talking about here, it will dissolve those nutrients that you are taking in, and due to those processes there, some chemicals are generated and they are poisonous. The same water helps in moving them away from where they are generated so that they come out either through urine or sweat or etc.
I think
so without water, you are sabotaging all of these important processes. You are preventing minerals from moving around in your body, and you are also keeping poisons, because the poisons can't move unless they are dissolved by this water.
They are flushed out afterwards.
But you'll find we don't take enough water, and in the end we make our lives very, very bit difficult. You may find that many of the extreme cancers that we are seeing, they partially arise from the fact that our bodies are not really supported in the way they are supposed to function. It's like having a vehicle and you're not putting in fuel. There's no way it's going to move. Or you put in just a small car bottle, then you move from here to there, it pulls air. So the bodies have to be supported, and we need to understand that this chemical called water is the main thing that keeps our bodies alive. All the other chemicals that come in, they could generate energy, etc., but they all finally have to sit on a proper layer of water.
I think the argument will be, you know, I know of a colleague who, for him, if you don't put colored water on his table, he will say, my dear, he will at least spend an extra to go and get the colored drink on the table. So whether it is juice, soda, I think
it is a big problem.
There's need to
the other
that water is a very
interesting thing about water. Allah, water is a miracle from Allah. And He has made it very abundant in that we don't even contemplate about it. Water has a high, what we call, specific heat capacity. For those who did some O-level physics, you know that. Now, when we talk of heat capacity, it means whenever you put heat near anything, that heat causes the other objects to become also hot. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made water to be very absorbent of heat. In that, before water really begins to get heated and to boil, you must use a lot of energy. So what is the advantage in that? It means once you have water within your body, this entire business of overheating and etc., it cannot occur, because the body cannot generate enough energy to cause that water that is flowing in your body to even increase in temperature. So your temperature will therefore keep that 37, 36.9 degrees. Even if you are in a hot environment or a cold environment, you will find your temperature largely remains the same, just because within you is a liquid that Allah has created in such a way that it is very difficult to change its temperature. And that is a very important aspect that Allah has given to this water. For most of the other liquids, some of them, even just a small heat, it turns into vapor, explodes and burns. Well, you know very well how these oil tankers have been boiling people in places like Chigogo and the others. That liquid is there, but for it, just a little heat and it becomes a vapor, and once there is some small fire applied, it explodes into... Imagine if water was behaving like that. There would be a lot of problems on Earth. But Allah has made it very stable. However much you heat it, it increases the temperature in very small bits until finally when it is able to boil. And even when it's boiling, it has a certain limit. It can't go beyond 100 and something degrees, and it keeps at that temperature. So it is a very stable material that can be in our bodies, and it keeps our bodies safe from unnecessary heat. Because you see, within our bodies, the way they work, that energy involves a lot of chemical reactions. So a lot of heat is generated, but it is able to cool down. And
maybe before you go to the next point, there is something that you can help us understand. In the very hot lands, Arabia and some other places, for them, the way to mitigate the effects of heat is by taking hot water. How do you explain that scientifically? Because I'm told one of the Ugandans went for Hajj, and every time they would feel thirst, they ran to a tub. And I'm told he had to run over 10 times the time. Guy, you had better better get hot water, then you stop going to there.
Now you see.
So what's the science between having to take hot water?
In order for the body to maintain that uniform temperature, the body has certain sensors that tell it what to do depending on the environment. When you go into a cold environment, the system tells the body, please generate some more heat. This man is in a cold place. Then when you go into a hot environment, yes, the body tells the regulator system, please cool down. Okay. This man is in a hot environment. Now, a problem arises when a person is in a very hot environment and is taking cold drinks.
Cold drinks, yes.
He's now confusing the body. Officially, he's in a hot environment, so he's supposed to be cooling himself. Yes. But again, he's pouring cold things onto himself, and the body is saying, this man is in a cold environment, please generate
and you're
some
giving
heat.
It cold.
So you end up generating the opposite of what you are supposed to get. That's why for them, in order to force this body to cool,
they are keto.
They put hot tea on it. So the body immediately realizes that this place is hot, and it begins to release the cooling agent. And in the end, the person cools down. For you think he's doing the opposite, but he's giving the body the correct message. Because once you attempt to give the body a signal that there is coldness, for it to respond by heating up. And in the end, you find however much water you take, you can. And remember, your stomach has a limit as to how much water.
Yes.
So you don't imagine that the cooling comes out of that water, which is the stomach. No, the stomach now keeps seeing you pumping a lot of water into it. And the thing is not having the effect. But a little warm material instead generates the cooling that is needed. And that is the whole idea.
So that's why the people from Arabia, you find them every time with a cup of coffee.
Exactly,
cup of tea,
for cooling. Because wallahi, here in Uganda, we are fortunate that Allah has given us a very moderate environment. This country is like some place that has one very large AC. For me, I've traveled to the Gulf, I've also traveled to the Far East, Malaysia, and I've also traveled to places like Nigeria. Yes. But you will not find a country like Uganda where the entire year round you have nearly the same temperature, and moreover a good one, around 26.
26, 27.
There are places, I was recently in Kano, there are times when you go there and the place is terribly hot. Even when you are sitting inside a vehicle, air comes and you feel like someone is blowing. You know, these machines that are used for drying hair in a cosmetology station. That level of heat, the hair dryer, is what you get. Then at times you go there and there is a lot of humidity. Your skin dries up and but here in Uganda, same uniform temperature. Even when it appears to be a hot season, still you are just a few degrees above what you are used to do, and you feel bad. But in other places, things are very tough. The last attribute of water that we shall have for today, although there are very many of them, is that water is very stable. For you to force water to turn into a gas, because primarily water is a liquid, but for you to force water to turn into a gas, you need a lot of energy.
Okay.
But other elements like alcohol, for example, that ethanol, if you look at it, it resembles water. But to turn it into a gas, even just normal room temperature can turn alcohol. That's why when you apply sanitizer on yourself, in a few seconds, the entire thing has gone, and you feel that coldness that comes once it evaporates. Imagine if water was like that. You are having this liquid, it's the one running your body, but all the time it is evaporating and leaving you without anything. It would be a very big problem. But Allah has given water stability. You require extreme levels of heat in order to force it to turn from the liquid form in which it is to another form, which is a gas. And even when it turns into a gas, you have to really keep the pressure up, otherwise it will very quickly turn back into the liquid. And all those are attributes that Allah has given to this material that maintains life. It's not only an origin for life, but it is also a very important part of what maintains life going forward. So those are some of the sifat of this water, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always put us in a place of abundant water. Here in Uganda, water is nearly everywhere. Although we buy it commercially at a high price, I think water would really be at maybe 200 shillings if we were a reasonable country with people buying things according to their level of value. But we find it's a bit expensive in some places. You find and I think partially it also participates in preventing people from buying it. Because imagine if that bottle was 200 shillings, the majority of people would just keep taking. But since it requires a whole 1,000, in some cases 4,000, so people tend to look at it more like discrimination. People tend to look at it more like some luxury. Yet water is an essential part of life. It is the source from which Allah has created life, and it is what sustains it.
Okay, I think as we are preparing to end the show, I want you to help us. There is a verse in Surah Waqi'ah, chapter 56, where Allah was challenging us that don't you look at the water that you use. If I were
تشربون أنتم أنزلتموه من المزن أم نحن المنزلون.
Then the second part is لو نشاء لجعلناه أجاجا. Could you give us a correlation between water and salt? Because Allah says if I were to turn all the water on earth into salt, could there be some correlation that
now
Allah had to specify mention water and salt?
Now you see, it's very interesting the way Allah has designed the water system on earth. The majority of water is actually very salty.
Oh, mashallah.
Because that is ocean water. And that salt also has a purpose. If that water was not salty like that, it would promote the growth of bacteria and other things that would cause it to possibly rot. If you look at lakes, usually on the boundaries, you find there's a lot of very smelly and not good things to look at, because the water does not promotes the growth of some of those microorganisms.
It doesn't repel.
But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it in that the oceans, which are the majority of water, it is extremely salty. But out of that salty water, Allah designed a mechanism that generates this fresh water that we have. And that mechanism is simply one: evaporate the water.
From the
Let
oceans.
it leave the salt on the within the main water body, and we have our pure water going up.
Oh, wow.
Once the pure water reaches the sky, we bring it back down as rain. And that's the only source of this good water that we see. Be it in a lake, be it in a river, it all comes from the Sama. And that's why Allah is asking you, are you the one that brings that water from the Sama? Now a person may claim that, no, the Chinese are able to do it. They take a drone into the air, but the Chinese are simply just repeating what they have seen, the way Allah does his thing. It is like imagining that if you do artificial insemination, you have now created a human being. You have not created a human being. You are simply imitating.
They call it cloning.
You are just imitating what you've seen in the natural sequence.
Mashallah.
So meaning the only way that we are able to get this good water that we use is only through that water that comes from the Sama.
So Allah
otherwise you cannot easily. The total effort that countries like Saudi Arabia put in to desalinate the water, because for them now they don't have a lot of rivers and you don't have even rain. So where are you going to get water? You simply pick that very salty water, remove the salt, and remain with whatever remains as water. But it's a very expensive process. But here in Uganda we have all this free water flowing around.
That verse of sort of work is specifically challenging Ugandans because the water we have at
are you the ones that cause that water to come down? Because that's the only way you ever get that pure water that is clean. Otherwise, all the other water that is on the planet is essentially very salty water. And when we talk of ocean water, a person may think it is just somehow salty. We are talking of extreme levels of salt. You pick like a cup of water and put in like 5 kgs of salt. That kind of radical salt that causes even the tongue to burn. That's what the ocean water is like.
Oh, wow.
Here in Ghana, we don't have access to the ocean, so maybe many of us have never tasted that water, but it is an extremely salty thing, in that if it was what we had, there would be a lot of problems. Yet it is also water. It's not really another substance, but it is extremely salty.
Okay, so viewer, the verses we are talking about in Surah Al-Waqiah, chapter 56, that you can look out for is from verse 68 up to verse 60. For 68 to 60 to 70, 68 to 70, there are 3 verses. You can check them out and then perhaps appreciate them further. And the other verse that talks about the water in its that is chapter 67, Surah Al-Mulk, the very last verse. Allah says, if you were to sink all the water there is in the earth, who is that power that can give you access to water? And the answer is none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can also check chapter 67 verse 30 to also give you an appreciation of the importance of the water that we have with us. But where we started from was that water is the source of all life. Allah has mentioned it in chapter 21 verse 30 that whatever you see on earth existing with life, its origin is water, and we're trying to give the importances and the different verses we can mention about water. So thank you very much for being a wonderful viewership. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues guiding us all and reward us all for the time and investment we make to see that this program becomes a success. We want to appreciate our guest for his making time to be with us. The research he does, you can see it is some great effort that we pray that Allah rewards you abundantly.
Amen.
Dear viewer, we shall be ending it here and pray that Allah gives us a fruitful week ahead. Please continue to prepare for Ramadan and know that it is the prime season we have in the whole year. Till then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Eno, yes, Salam TV.
Turn your house into the GoTV Kids Club. Your GoTV package is your ticket to entry, and there's plenty for everyone. Discover new places, play along with wacky characters, and learn fun facts and essential skills. So get and stay connected to GoTV.